بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. So we were discussing the mardud, and we were looking at the kind of types of rejected hadith, which was the rejection is based on a drop in the isnad, and we looked at the concept of mu'allaq 2 weeks ago. Today he is discussing, Imam Ibn Hajar is going to discuss a particular issue which is known as مسألة التعديل على الإبهام. So فإن قال, yeah, فإن قال. So do you remember the discussion that we were having, Umar and Hussein?
Remind me. I remember.
So the discussion of mu'allaq.
Remind me again. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Just 1 minute. Whiteboard. So mu'allaq is a type of rejection in hadith. The reason why mu'allaq is a type of rejection is because a person is missing from the isnad. Mu'allaq normally happens in the beginning of the isnad. So if Imam Bukhari misses out his teacher, then that will be mu'allaq. Let's see if I have. No. I had it somewhere. Where did we have it? Right. So this is from 2 weeks ago. So we said this is mu'allaq. Mu'allaq is when an author, musannif, he misses out a rawi from the beginning of the isnad. Okay, so if Imam Bukhari misses out his teacher, this is called mu'allaq. If he misses out 2 people, this is called mu'allaq. If he misses out 3 people, all the way. If there's anything that is missing from the beginning of the isnad and the person who's missing out is the author, then this is called mu'allaq. So when we say, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الأعمال بالنيات, this is mu'allaq. Okay. However, here what we're doing is we are talking about the asr al-tadween. Remember, we're always talking about the asr al-tadween. So me saying قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الأعمال بالنيات, although I haven't given the isnad, nevertheless, it's famously known that this hadith is found in Bukhari, Muslim, and all of the other books, and therefore it's not really mu'allaq, because we know what the provenance and the origins of the hadith is. But we are talking about during the Asr al-Tadween, for the first 500 years when hadith were being collected. If a person was to report a hadith which just said Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam without giving an isnad, then what is the nature of that? And the idea is, or the understanding is, that a mu'allaq hadith is weak unless it's an inqita'u sanad, unless somebody else can prove that there is the hadith is joined. So for example, the very famous one is balaghat of Imam Malik. Imam Malik says balaghani, it has reached me, right? And then he just mentions a tabi'i or a sahabi and doesn't mention the full isnad. This is called balaghatul Malik. Balaghatul Malik are known as inqita', and mu'allaqat are in a way weak. However, later scholars like Imam Ibn Abdul Barr in his al-Isti'ab and other books have provided full isnad for the balaghat of Imam Malik. Yeah. One of the very first books that Imam Ibn Hajar wrote at the age of 30, and he became very famous for this, is his book Ta'liq al-Ta'liq, which is basically a looking at the mu'allaqat, all the mu'allaqat of Imam al-Bukhari. So mu'allaq basically means when an author misses out name from the beginning of the isnad. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes. I remember discussion now.
Okay, and we are talking here from the what's really important is we need to understand that we are talking about the Asr al-Tadween. If I was to narrate a hadith mu'allaq, and it doesn't really matter because who am I? And that hadith is probably found in some books. Yeah. So now we have a mas'ala here, and that mas'ala is called mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham. This is a fara'. Okay, so you have usul and you got furu'. This is a furu' of the mas'ala of mu'allaq. The furu' is فَإِنْ قَالَ جميع من أحذفه ثقات جاءت مسألة التعديل على الإبهام. If a musannif says جميع من أحذفه ثقات, everyone that I omit in the isnad, if I omit anyone in the isnad, then that omission is because this person is thiqa. Yeah. So this mas'ala is called mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham. That we are doing ta'dil. We are verifying someone based on obscurity, ambiguity, mas'alatu ta'dil. So am I allowed to do this? Mas'alatu, or is it allowed? Is mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham accepted? So if a rawi says, جاءني حدثني رجل, رجل is mubham. حدثني رجل. And then this alim, let's say Imam Shafi'i, he basically says, well, everyone that I narrate from and everyone that I miss the names out, I only miss out the names of thiqa rawat. I don't miss out the names of non-thiqa rawat. So he's making that claim. So where does that leave us? Yeah, let me just get my notes out. So this is called mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham. So the hukum of mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham is wal jumhuru la yuqbalu hatta yusamma, that the jumhur do not accept mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham until that person is mentioned. So so for example, if this is haddathani thiqa, حدثني ثقة or حدثني رجل, can we accept? So in our everyday language, Hussein and Omar, we basically say, oh, I only take from authentic sources, or I only get the best, yeah, or I only shop in all the expensive shops. So if I say to you, like, Omar, you bought something from the shop, and I say, well, can you please tell me which shop you got this from? And you basically say, oh, you don't need to know the name of the shop because I only shop from the best. Yeah. Right. This is called mas'alatu ta'dil ala al-ibham. You are verifying something and yet leaving that ambiguous. So can I take your word for on face value, right? So you might basically be shopping from Primark. Do you have Primark in America?
No, I've never heard of that store.
Okay, you might be shopping from one of those, I don't know, Asda.
We have Kmart.
Yeah, Kmart. Walmart. Kmart. Yeah. And when you say I only shop from the best, right? What you have in your mind is Walmart, right?
Right.
So the ulama, their argument is that yes, maybe it is thiqa. This person is thiqa according to you, but tell us the name so that we can also assess it. And the reason why is because ulama have made mistakes. For example, Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, he narrates from Abdul Umar in the back.
Yeah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Okay. So we were discussing the issue of at-ta'dil ala al-ibham. So I was basically mentioning that the reason why the jumhur of the scholars do not accept at-ta'dil ala al-ibham is because there is no kind of empirical way of assessing the person who is missing, whether in reality that person is thiqa or not. So as I mentioned, Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi narrates from Abdul Karim ibn Abil Mukhariq because he deems Abdul Karim ibn Abil Mukhariq to be a thiqa rawi, but the rest of the ulama have deemed Abdul Karim ibn Abil Mukhariq to be a weak rawi. Right. Similarly, Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi basically narrates from one of his teachers who, by the name of Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Aslami. He used to narrate from him and he used to say, Haddathani man la attahim, that I narrate from someone who I do not declare or I do not criticize. But the rest of the ulama, that was Imam Shafi'i's personal kind of relationship with that person. But the rest of the ulama declared him to be weak. So this is why the Jamhur ulama have said that it is not permissible to accept a riwayah to al-ta'dil bil-ibham. Yeah, and that's the position. Lakin, qala Ibn Salah. However, Imam Ibn Salah says, هنا إن وقع الحذف في كتاب التزمت صحته كالبخاري فما أتى فيه بالجزم دل على أنه ثبت إسناده عنده وإنما حذف لغرض من الأغراض وما أتى فيه بغير الجزم ففيه مقال. Imam Ibn Salah basically mentions that however, if the ta'dil ala al-ibham is or the mu'allaq is coming in a book where the author has stipulated that they will not narrate anything other than a sahih hadith, such as Imam al-Bukhari, then if there is a ta'dil ala al-ibham, okay, with jazm, he says qala, right, or arwi an man la attahimuhu, with firm conviction, dalla ala annahu sabata isnaduhu indahu. This is a dalil that the isnad is sabit according to that person. وَإِنَّمَا حُذِفَ لِغَرْضٍ مِنَ الْأَغْرَاضِ, and they have deleted or omitted the isnad or that naming that person because of some reason. وَمَا أَتَى فِيهِ بِغَيْرِ الْجَزْمِ, and however, if the narrator of the narration is mentioned as qeel, without a conviction, then there are differences of opinion. Like Imam Ibn Salah is basically saying, like people like Imam al-Bukhari, when they bring a mu'allaq or when they bring ta'dil ala al-ibham, if it is jazm, then it should be accepted. If it is not bil jazm, then it should not be accepted. And وقد أوضحت أمثلة ذلك في النكت على ابن الصلاح. And Imam Ibn Hajar says that I have explained examples of this or given examples of this in my book An-Nukat ala Ibn Salah. Let's see if I can find any. So this is from An-Nukat ala Ibn Salah. Imam Ibn Salah says, أحدها أن يكون كرره وهذا قد تداخل مع الأوجه التي ذكرها الإسماعيل. So one of the reasons why the ulama they do mu'allaq, or especially Bukhari, is because he has mentioned it elsewhere. So now he's not giving the full isnad. Okay. ثانيها أن يكون أوردها في معرض المتابعة أو الاستشهاد لا على سبيل الاحتجاج، ولا شك أن المتابعة يتسامح فيه بالنسبة إلى الأصول، وإنما يعلقها وإن كانت عنده مسموعة لئلا يسوقها مساق الأصول. So he's basically saying, and another reason why he may bring a hadith as mu'allaq or a ta'dil ala al-ibham is because he's using that hadith as a mutaba'a and a shahid and not as an asl in the mas'ala. And he is using the mu'allaq by not mentioning the isnad to tell us that that he has heard this hadith, he has a full isnad, but to kind of differentiate between the asl and the supplementary evidences, so that we don't treat these as primary evidences, rather is supplementary evidences. والثالث أن يكون إيراد لذلك منبها على موضع يوهم تعليل الرواية التي على شرطه، كأنه يروي حديثا من طريق سفيان الثوري عن حميد عن أنس، ويقول بعده قال يحيى بن أيوب عن حميد سمعت أنسا، فمراده بهذا التعليق أن هنا مما سمعه لئلا يتوهم. So sometimes he does this kind of تعليق in order to kind of draw our attention to a certain problem in the isnad. So for example, there's this, maybe I've got a hadith here. Right, this hadith that he's referring to in the Nukhbat, he says that كأنه يروي حديث من طريق سفيان الثوري عن حميد عن أنس. So now this Humayd is basically is a mudallis. He's narrating from Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So straight after that, he brings an isnad without a hadith, and he basically says, Yahya ibn Ayyub an Humayd sami'tu Anasan. So he's just bringing one hadith, right, to show that he is aware that this person is a mudallis, but here the tadlis is not affecting because he's got sami'tu here. And this is the hadith here. I remember bringing it out. Bab Sahih al-Bukhari, كتاب فضائل القرآن، باب فضل سورة البقرة. حدثنا محمد بن يوسف قال حدثنا سفيان عن حميد عن أنس بن مالك قال بزق النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في ثوبه قال أبو عبد الله طوله بن أبي مريم قال أخبرنا يحيى بن أيوب حدثني حميد قال سمعت أنسا عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So here he's brought a shorter isnad. This shorter isnad is with the hadith. This has a problem because Humayd is a mudallis and he's doing an, but then he brings another isnad which is not related to this hadith, but here he's just showing that the sami'atu. So he does, for many reasons, he will do mu'allaq or he do riwayah at-ta'dil ala al-ibham. And Imam Ibn Hajar, he mentions this in Nukhbat, and then he's got a book also called Ta'liq al-Ta'liq, which is the book that made him famous. But also in the Muqaddamah of Fathul Bari, Hajj Sari, he very meticulously documents all of the mu'allaqat and of Imam Bukhari, and he explains why Imam Bukhari has done this mu'allaq. Okay, is that okay, or shall we carry on?
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, just a quick question. So, am I jumping to conclusions here? But are all the mu'allaqs of Imam Bukhari supplementary evidence in his mind?
It's a good question. In his mind, yeah, in his mind it is, but not necessarily in reality. So, for example, the hadith that he narrates with related to mu'allaq, and he narrates this hadith about music, music and especially musical instruments. This hadith is mu'allaq and mentioned, and is mentioned with the sighat al-tamrid. So people like Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi and Sheikh Abdullah Juday and others, when they talk about music in their respective books, they have to deal with this hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari. So they say, first of all, it is a hadith which is Imam Bukhari has mentioned mu'allaqan, so it's not from the Aslul Kitab. And secondly, the isnad is mentioned with the sighat al-tamrid, and therefore, even according to Imam Bukhari, he doesn't see it as the same level. Other people will basically say that no, the fact that it is in the Bukhari and Imam Bukhari mentioned it as a mu'allaq, that's enough to for us that it is a sahih hadith. So here we got the mu'allaqat al-Bukhari. This is from the Muqaddamah of Fathul Bari. وصل في مكان آخر, that if the mu'allaq is mawsul, muttasil in another place, then we accept it, right? So he mentioned it mu'allaqan in one place, but in the same Sahih al-Bukhari he mentioned it muttasilan in another place, then this mu'allaq should be read with that muttasil. Okay, that's accepted. However, if he just mentioned it mu'allaqan in the Sahih al-Bukhari, walam yasil fi makanin akhar, then either it's بصيغة الجزم. Imam Ibn Hajar says is maqbul بصيغة الجزم. That's the opinion of also Ibn Salah. This is the opinion that he's mentioning, and Imam Ibn Hajar seems to accept it. Sheikh Sharif Hatim al-Auni even then basically says that we should not accept it, because even though Imam Bukhari is doing bil jazm, we still need to see who that person is in order to kind of assess who that person. If it's sighatul tamrid, then it is not to be accepted. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qardawi, Sheikh Abdullah Judai, they argue that the hadith of music is mu'allaqan and is mentioned with sighat al-tamrid, and therefore we are under no compulsion to accept it, even though it comes in the Sahih al-Bukhari. Yeah.
Okay. Mona, can you just go back to that chart and if you just give me one, like half a minute, just to quickly copy it down?
Yeah, so these are just my notes, really. Over the years, I've been teaching, and I keep adding to these notes. Umar, what madhab do you follow in fiqh?
No. Malik.
Imam Malik, okay.
Jazakallah.
Okay. والثاني, so the second type of inqita' is هو ما سقط من آخره من بعد التابعي هو المرسل. So the second type of inqita', so mu'allaq was basically when there was an inqita' in the beginning of the isnad, where the musannif is dropping out a person. This is called mu'allaq. If we go to the other side of the isnad, right, and where we have a tabi'i, what is it? Where we have a tabi'i who is missing out the sahabi and directly narrating from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is known as mursal. Yeah. وصورته, and the surah is أن يقول التابعي سواء كان كبيرا أم صغيرا قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كذا أو فعل كذا أو فعل بحضرته كذا ونحو ذلك. That a tabi'i says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this or did this or something was done in front of him. The fact that a tabi'i is a tabi'i by definition because they have not met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or else they would have been a sahabi, then it means that they could not have heard this directly from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the source, they are missing out the source, and the source is most likely it is a sahabi. Now, Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani says, وَإِنَّمَا ذُكِرَ فِي قِسْمِ الْمَرْدُودِ لِلْجَهْلِ بِحَالِ الْمَحْذُوفِ لأنه يحتمل أن يكون صحابيا ويحتمل أن يكون تابعيا. It says the reason why the mursal is rejected and it is a part of the mardud is because we don't know the state of the person who is being dropped. So we're just making an assumption that a tabi'i always narrates from a sahabi, and therefore when a tabi'i says qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it must be a sahabi who is being dropped. And Imam Ibn Hajar says no, this is a false assumption, because this is a vertical kind of isnad transmission, but there is no reason why there can't be horizontal transmission, that one tabi'i narrates from another tabi'i, and then he narrates from a sahabi, so the name of the tabi'i is being dropped. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what Imam Ibn Hajar is saying. He says لأنه يحتمل أن يكون صحابيا, there is a possibility that the person who's being dropped by the tabi'i is a sahabi. ويحتمل أن يكون تابعيا, However, there is a second possibility that the person who is being omitted is another tabi'i. Yeah. So it's not necessarily that a tabi'i is always narrating from a sahabi. Imam Abu Hanifa doesn't directly narrate always from the sahabis. He narrates from other kibar tabi'i. Okay, so he says that there is a possibility that either the person who's being dropped is a sahabi or the person who is being dropped is a tabi'i. وعلى الثاني, if the person, hypothetically, if we say that if the person, so he's giving a logical, rational reason why mursal is not accepted, right? وعلى الثاني, if perchance it's the second person, it's the second alternative, which is that the person who is missing is a tabi'i, يحتمل أن يكون ضعيفا ويحتمل أن يكون ثقة. There is a possibility that this tabi'i is da'if or this tabi'i is thiqa. If this tabi'i who is being dropped is thiqa, then we can live with that. And if this tabi'i is da'if, then this causes a problem. وعلى الثاني, and let's say perchance that the tabi'i who's being dropped is thiqa, يحتمل أن يكون حمل عن صحابي. This second tabi'i who's been dropped from the isnad, there is a possibility that he took the hadith from the sahabi, ويحتمل أن يكون حمل عن تابعين آخر, or there is a possibility that he narrated from a third tabi'i. وعلى الثاني يعود الاحتمال السابق, and then on the second, the first possibilities are there, that there is this third person, there is a possibility that the tabi'i who's being dropped by the second person, so this is the third tabi'i, is either da'if or either sahih, and that third person is then narrating from a sahabi or narrating from a tabi'i. If he's narrating from a tabi'i, it might be that the tabi'i is da'if or the tabi'i is thiqa, and then there is a possibility that that person is narrating from a sahabi or narrating from another tabi'i, and that tabi'i is sahih or thiqa or is da'if. Amma بالتجويز العقلي, as far as rational calculation is concerned, فإلى ما لا نهاية له, we can carry on with this, right? So if we start from the beginning, the tabi'i said قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Imam Ibn Hajar says there is a possibility he dropped out the sahabi, or he dropped out and omitted another tabi'i. If he's dropped another tabi'i, okay, then if the tabi'i is da'if, then this brings our whole isnad down. But let's say if the tabi'i is thiqa, and that tabi'i is narrating from another sahabi, okay, that's fine. Or he might be narrating from a third tabi'i. So this third tabi'i, either the third tabi'i is da'if, which is problematic, or this third tabi'i is narrating from the sahabi, or is narrating from a fourth tabi'i. Now this fourth tabi'i is either da'if or is thiqa, and if it's thiqa, then he's narrating from a fifth tabi'i or a sahabi. And he says ila ma la nihaya, we can carry on doing that. But then he says wa amma bil istiqra, as far as empirical evidence is concerned. So this is a rational kind of argument he's making, that we can carry on doing this ad infinitum, these alternatives ad infinitum. But if we are going to go with empirical evidence, amma bil istiqra, as far as empirical evidence is concerned, فإلى ستة أو سبعة وهو أكثر ما وجد من رواية بعض التابعين عن بعض. That empirical evidence shows that there has been horizontal transmission of one tabi'i narrating from another tabi'i up to 6 to 7 times before a sahabi comes. So you have tabi'i number 1, right? Let's not assume that tabi'i number 1 has directly narrated from the sahabi. No, he's actually narrated from tabi'i number 2. Tabi'i number 2 narrated from tabi'i number 3, 3 from 4, 4 from 5, 5 from 6, 6 from 7, 7 from the sahabi. So Imam Ibn Hajar says that as far as empirical evidence is concerned, then we have evidence of isnads where there are 6 or 7 horizontal transmission of tabi'is before we reach the sahabi. If we were to take a rational approach to this, then this is ad infinitum. Does that make sense? Let's have a look. There we go. This is me trying to kind of map this out. So this is somebody who's dropped. Now we don't know. So this is a tabi'i here, and this tabi'i dropped someone. So now we don't know whether this is a sahabi or it is a tabi'i. If it's a sahabi, then alhamdulillah, we made our link. However, if it's a tabi'i, then either the tabi'i is strong or weak. If the tabi'i is weak, then we don't need to deal with that anymore. The tabi'i is strong. The tabi'i is strong, he's either narrating from a sahabi or from another tabi'i. If he's narrating from another tabi'i, that tabi'i is either strong or weak, right? If it's weak, then we don't need to deal with that. If it's strong, then either he's narrating from a strong tabi'i or from a weak tabi'i ad infinitum. So do you understand the scenario that he's mentioning?
Yes.
Yeah, Hussein?
Yep.
Yeah, this is why mursal is not accepted according to the ulama of hadith. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. فَإِنْ عُرِفَ. There is some kalam here. I will do after I read this bit. فَإِنْ عُرِفَ مِنْ عَادَةِ التَّابِعِيِّ أنه لا يرسل إلا عن ثقة فذهب جمهور المحدثين إلى التوقف لبقاء الاحتمال. If it is known from the practices of a tabi'i that this tabi'i does not do irsal other than from thiqa rawis, meaning that the only narrator that is missing out is a thiqa rawi. And we know that because we've investigated the riwayat of this person, and we know that this person does not, the only people that he drops are thiqa. Then even then, the Jumhur has said that we will suspend judgment on this isnad لبقاء الاحتمال, because there's still a possibility that there is an exception being made here. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. وهو أحد قولي أحمد. Tawaqquf is also one of the opinions of Imam Ahmad, even though we know that this rawi does not, this rawi only does irsal from thiqa ruwat. Imam Ahmad and the Jumhur of the Muhaddisun are saying that we will still suspend judgment. وهو قول وثانيهما. And the second opinion is وهو قول المالكيين والكوفيين. So Umar, you and Hussein here, we are on the same boat. The second opinion is يقبل مطلقا. That is the opinion of the Malikis and the Hanafis, that if it is known that the person does not do irsal other than thiqa rawi, then that is mutlaqan, it is accepted. Yeah. وقال الشافعي يقبل إن اعتضى بمجيئه من وجه آخر يباين الطريق الأولى مسندا أو مرسلا ليرجح احتمال كون المحذوف ثقة في نفس الأمر. Imam al-Shafi'i is a bit more nuanced here. Imam al-Shafi'i says that the mursal will only be accepted if there is some kind of alibi or fortification. إن اعتدى بمجيئه من وجه آخر, that if there is another turuq to that mursal hadith, where it kind of clarifies the first tariqah, the first isnad, either by giving a full isnad, or that in itself is mursal, but there is some clarification in that, because there is a possibility that the mahdhuf, the person who is being dropped, in and of itself can be thiqah. So Imam al-Shafi'i basically says that that the mursal, in order for the mursal to be accepted, it needs to have a bit more information through different isnads. So what we have here is three opinions. Number one is Imam Ibn Hajar Asqalani is saying that the primary mas'ala is that mursals are not to be accepted at all. And that is the position of the Shafi'i school of thought as well, that mursal should not be accepted at all. However, then there is the question of mursal min al-thiqa, that if the person who's doing irsal only does irsal from thiqa, then what is the opinion here? Jumhur muhaddithun are of the opinion, and that is one of the opinions of Imam Ahmad, that they do tawaqquf. Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa are of the opinion that this is to be accepted. Imam Shafi'i is basically saying that there is to be a bit more nuanced here. Okay. ونقل أبو بكر الرازي من الحنفية وأبو الوليد الباجي من المالكية. And Abu Bakr al-Razi from the Hanafis and Abu al-Walid al-Baji from the Malikis mentioned أن الراوي إذا كان يرسل عن الثقات وغيرهم لا يقبل مرسله اتفاقا. That if there is a rawi who is known, so this is another mas'ala, that there is a rawi who is known that he is known to have narrated does irsal from weak narrators and also thiqa narrators, then Abu Bakr al-Razi and Abu al-Walid al-Baji are of the opinion that this person's irsal riwayat will not be accepted at all, because we don't know if he's doing irsal from a thiqa or if he's doing irsal from a da'if. Have you understood the mas'ala before I kind of go into a bit more nuance?
Yes.
Yeah.
And would it be accurate to say the ulama of hadith, their primary goal is ensuring the accuracy of the information, and therefore they are, a bit more stringent in terms of, because since the even if someone is only narrating from, is known to only narrate from thiqat, since it's not dispositive that in this case they did, they suspend judgment because they're looking at the accuracy of the information first and foremost as scholars of hadith. But in the fiqh sense, they're using these, I assume, right, to formulate legal rulings or in fatwa and things like that. And so there's a difference when the fiqh scholars are looking at it. I guess they're looking at it in that sense. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that's 100% true. The ulama of hadith, they basically come at this from a more empirical point of view, that empirically can we ascertain the veracity of the missing person. And they're basically saying, because we can't, therefore we have to reject the mursal, even if we know that this is a thiqa, even if we know la yusli illa an thiqa, even then we have to do tawaqquf. And remember, tawaqquf, we've read just a few lessons ago, tawaqquf is another name for rejection. Okay, it's just that we just suspend judgment unless we can find more evidence. So they're more empirical. Now, the Hanafis here, and I can't really tell you about the Maliki madhab. I'm not too familiar with the Maliki madhab. The Hanafis are of the opinion that the mursal of the Sahabi, so Imam Ibn Hajar hasn't talked about the mursalat of the Sahabi. The mursalat of the Sahabi, do you know what it means by the mursalat of the Sahabi? Mursalat of the Sahabi is when a Sahabi is doing irsal, where he's saying Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but actually he or she, they did not hear that hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they heard it from another Sahabi. For example, it is said about Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu that he has only heard 4 hadiths from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly, because he was very young when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died. Right, so he only heard about 4 hadiths from the Prophet directly. Every other hadith where he says Qala Rasulullah, he actually got it from somebody else. So the hadith of the Prophet doing talbiyah in Jamaratul Uqba, he says قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, but he actually got that from his brother Fadl ibn Abbas. Right? Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala anhu, there's only one hadith narrated from Nu'man ibn Bashir directly from the Prophet where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ala wa inna fi kulli jasadin mudgha, idha saluhat saluha al-jasad kulluh, wa idha fasadat fasada al-jasad kulluh, ala wa hiya al-qalb." This is the only hadith which Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala anhu directly narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has narrated so many other ahadith, but none of them are direct from the Prophet. These are mursalat of Sahabi. Now, unanimously, there might be so many ahadith that say that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she narrates about in the very second hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, Babu Kayfa Kana Bad'ul Wahyi, say that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was the narrator. She must have narrated this. Either the Prophet told her, or she must have got that from another Sahabi, for example, her father. But the ulama have unanimously accepted that the mursalat of the Sahabi are accepted because as-Sahaba kulluhum udul, right? So that's why we accept the mursalat of the Sahaba. The Hanafis are of the opinion that also the mursal ahadith of the Khairul Qurun, which is the first generation of the Sahabi, the second generation is the Tabi'i, and the third generation is the Tabi'i. The mursalat of these three generations, the Hanafis accept, right? Mutlaqan, to be maqbool. Mutlaqan, they accept it. In fact, we find Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i was asked by Sulaiman ibn Mahran al-A'mash that why do you, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, he was from Sigar al-Tabi'i, his uncles, Aswad ibn Yazid al-Nakha'i and Alqama ibn Yazid al-Nakha'i, they were students of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Okay, so Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, what he does is, Sulaiman ibn Mahran al-A'mash says to him that, why do you always do irsal for? Why don't you just name your sources when you say a hadith? So he says, when I name my source, when I basically do isnad, when I name my source, it means that I heard from that one person. But if I omit my source and I go directly to the Prophet ﷺ, that's because so many people have narrated to me that I can't narrate all of their names, but all of them I deem to be thiqa. Okay, so this is why there is a saying in Hanafi fiqh, man asnada faqad ahala, wa man arsala faqad takaffala. Man asnada faqad ahala, wa man arsala faqad takaffala. That whoever has provided us an isnad has provided us with a reference that we can. Faqad ahala, ihala means to refer someone to something. Whoever has given us an isnad, they have provided us with a reference that we can check. وَمَنْ أَرْسَلَ فَقَدْ تَكَفَّلَ. But whoever has done irsal, meaning that they didn't name the sources, فَقَدْ تَكَفَّلَ, they have become our kafil. They have taken the responsibility on their shoulders to present something to us accurately. In that sense, the Hanafi scholars will say that mursal is much more sahih than a musnad. This is a particular Hanafi take on this. I have written about this as to why the Hanafis accept irsal and what is the reason. And one of the reasons is because of the proximity of the people, that the people that they were doing irsal from, they knew them personally. Okay, whereas a little later, where Imam Shafi'i is far away removed from the level of the Sahabi and the Kibar of Tabi'i. So for him, he doesn't have that unique personal relationship to be able to ascertain. So he needs to take a methodical, a more empirical scientific method, which is that we, rather than taking this personal method, we have to take a more scientific method. So this is why there is, Imam al-Sarakhsi mentions this in the Usul al-Sarakhsi, that the Hanafi method has got a lot of husn al-dhann, whereas the Shafi'i method is more kind of cold scientific, because of the of the fact that he was removed from that early period. I write about this in my PhD thesis. I'll share that part, or also in the Muqaddamah of the Ala Sunan, I wrote about this as well. Any questions before we move on?
Is Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion the same, that the Musalat of the first three generations are accepted?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you said the Hanafis accept that. Is that also Imam Abu Hanifa's point of view?
Yes. Yes.
Or is that just generally the schools?
Yeah, it's the opinion of the school. Yeah.
So not Imam Abu Hanifa's.
We don't really have from the direct opinions, his words from Imam Abu Hanifa, where we got the opinion of the school. It's the opinion of the school. We don't really know what was the personal opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa.
Okay. But sorry, just to clarify, it is known that his opinion is that if a person does, or Tabi does a mursal narration only with Sikha people, then it's accepted. That's his own opinion.
Just give me 1 minute. My dad's calling me. I just need to use
no problem.
3
Get
times.
that call. Definitely take it.
It's called 3 times. Probably it's nothing, but okay. Yeah. So say we don't really know what the personal opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa is. We know the opinion of the madhab, and there's a lot of ahadith which are mursal, which have been accepted by the Hanafis, and I presume these are coming from Imam Abu Hanifa, or certainly his students. Yeah, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, let's carry on. والقسم الثالث من أقسام السقط من الإسناد. The third type of والقسم الثالث من أقسام السقط من الإسناد. The third type of drop in the إسناد is إن كان باثنين فصاعدا مع التوالي فهو المعدل. That if there is a drop in the إسناد where there is 2 drops and 2 omissions, and these omissions are consecutive, one after the other, this is called mu'dal. Mu'dal basically means complicated. Yeah. The reason why it's complicated is because when you have 1 drop in the isnad, there is still ways of knowing who that missing link is, by looking at the student and by looking at the teacher, and then seeing, matching their students and matching their teachers and etc. and their age and everything. You can basically come to some kind of understanding that, okay, this is the missing link because the circumstantial evidence tells us, right? But when you've got 2 people consecutively missing, that becomes a bit more difficult to work out, because then you don't know. Then you've got 4 generations of people. The person that's mentioned and the teacher that is mentioned, and then you've got 2 people consecutively missing, right? This is why this is called mu'dal. But mu'dal is only when it is consecutive. Okay. Now, mu'dal, if it comes also in the beginning of the isnad, then it is also mu'allaq. Mu'allaq and mu'dal. There's umum khusus min wajhin, which we looked at. There is a book by an Andalusian Maliki scholar who wrote the entire Ulum al-Hadith in kind of like a love poetry. His name is Ibn al-Farah, and he basically starts, he says, غرامي صحيح ولا عيش فيك معضل. That my love for you is sahih, but living with you is very complicated. Right? So he uses these terminologies of sahih and mu'dal, and he weaves them into this this poetry. غرامي صحيح والعيش فيك معدل. That my love for you is pure and is sahih, but living with you is very difficult. Right? وإلا فإن كان الساقط باثنين غير متواليين في موضعين مثلا فهو المنقطع، وكذا إن سقط واحد فقط أو أكثر من اثنين لكن يشترط عدم التوالي. And similarly وإلا, and if it's not وإلا what, if it's not consecutive فإن كان الساقط باثنين غير متواليين, if there are two people missing in the isnad but they're not consecutive but rather they are in two different places of the isnad مثلا, then this is called منقطع. وكذا إن سقط واحد فقط. And similarly, if there is one person missing in the middle of the isnad or more than one but they're not consecutive, then these are all called munqati'. So what we have is, we have first of all the concept of inqita' basically means a drop in the isnad. Then we have from that we have the mu'allaq. The mu'allaq is when there is a drop in the beginning of the isnad. We have mursal. Mursal is a drop that is at the end of the isnad. So remember, the beginning is the part where Imam Bukhari sits, the end is where the Prophet sits. So the mursal is when there's a drop in the end of the isnad. If there is two consecutive drops in the isnad, this is called mu'adal. And besides these three mu'allaq, mursal and mu'adal, if there are isnad drops in any other parts of the isnad, even though there are more than one, as long as they're not consecutive, then this is just called munqati'. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's leave it here, inshallah, because from next week we'll read about inqita' wadih and inqita' khafi, which then gets a bit more complicated. Is that okay?
Yes.
Any questions?
Jazakallahu khairan.
Any questions?
No questions today from me.
Okay, barakallah feek. I'll see you, inshallah, next week.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.